Good evening and welcome back from spring break. Hope you use that time wisely to catch up on everything, and now you're ready to go on to a number of other chapters. You've got some of the hardest stuff behind you, but there's a bit more to come. So this week we're going to talk about implementation planning. Tonight we're going to talk about getting the list of tasks in order to do your implementation plan and how to brainstorm that, which you do not include in the paper. And then the three other sections. So there are three sections to this chapter: resource planning, sequencing, and scheduling. So let's get started. First of all, you want to think about what goes into the implementation plan. This is a nice little summary that shows that it's kind of a systems theory approach to implementation planning. You have inputs, you have your activities, and you have your outputs, and then you have the constraints coming in and the enablers. What we're going to focus on in this chapter are these activities: defining and budgeting project tasks, identifying the needed resources, developing the project schedule and the project plan, and any supporting management plans that you may need to do. So let's talk about brainstorming. Now, one of the things you need to do is to develop your to-do list of all the tasks that need to be done in order to get this done. Well, this is one good way of doing that. And it is using a tree diagram. This comes from the 7 management and planning tools of the Japanese. You know, this was the follow-on to total quality management, which we usually use in the form of TQEM or TQSM. But it is one of the tools there, and it is a nice, easy brainstorming tool that really helps you develop your task list. So in this, it kind of looks like a sideways tree where you have the project and then the activities and the tasks. Now you can also try doing it vertically, but this is the way it's typically done. Do not include this in the paper because it'll be duplicated with your sequence map and your Gantt chart and all of that. You don't need to have 2 or 3 versions of the same thing. So do not include this tree diagram, but it is a very useful tool for generating your task list. And these are kind of the 2 steps that you have. You ask yourself 2 questions. What do I have to do to achieve this objective or to complete this project, complete this activity? And so we have, like, for instance, here, objective 1, launching the quality campaign program. And then what do I need to do in order to launch the quality campaign program? And I've come up with 2 things here: enrich users' skills and knowledge, and promote and improve a safety program. Once you have that list, then you ask the same question of the next level. So what do I need to do to provide or enrich user skills and knowledge? And to do that, I need to conduct internal training, seminars, and workshops, and develop and update materials of laboratory tutorials. And that usually gets you as far down as you need to go in terms of getting your task list. And once you get down to this level, you need to take a little backwards look, because when you're brainstorming one section at a time, one level at a time, sometimes you can kind of go off on a tangent. And so you want to take a backwards look and ask yourself, am I still working on this original objective or this original project? So that's just kind of something to make sure that you stay on track. But this list here will be what you create your sequence chart, your Gantt chart, and all of those kinds of things. So try to make it fairly complete. And you can always add to it if you think of more things. So the next step is to think about the resources that you're going to need in order to complete your implementation plan. This includes the amount of time, the materials, any equipment that you need, the skilled labor that you need, any training that you need to include, and the costs. So you want to develop your list of resources that are required for the project plan. Now, here are some additional forces that may or may not apply to you, depends on your project. Do you need information systems? Do you need to meet regulatory requirements? Do you need infrastructure? Do you need to include your recommendations in the budgeting cycle? If it's a big project like solar panels, you may need to do that, in which case, that's going to affect the length of your implementation plan. Do you need to do some organizational design? Remember, you did that in the last chapter with change management. Now you would be incorporating this. Do you need to do any of those things as part of your implementation plan? What do you need to communicate for your implementation plan? And what kind of financial management things do you need to do? So develop something like a resource management planning worksheet of some kind. This is a very detailed one. You will not need to have it this complicated. You just use the information that you have or that you need. Remember, what we're trying to do is to create a completed staff work. I've told some of you about this. Completed staff work is you want to give your stakeholders everything they need in order to complete the project. And so they need to know what resources, how much time, if there are specific people, specific skills, specific training that's needed, they need to know all of that. So as I say, you don't need to make it anything near this complicated, but this is a nice resource planning worksheet that's out there. And so I pulled it in to give you an idea of what real world resource management planning worksheets look like. Part 2 of the written part of the chapter is sequencing. Once you have your task list, you have to put it in the right sequence. When you're doing the tree diagram, if you're using that to generate your task list, that's not in any, you're just brainstorming. That's not in any particular order. And so you need to sequence it so that you have the right order in which to do these things. And there's at least 3 different ways that we're going to take a look at it. The first 2 are more tools from the 7 management and planning tools from the Japanese. And that includes the activity network, also known as a PERT chart, also known as the critical path analysis. And they use those interchangeably, so you might as well know them all as activity network diagram, or you can use a process decision program chart, PDPC. And then the third one is the work breakdown structure, and we'll look at that. That's not one of the 7 management and planning tools. Okay, so this is the critical path analysis, or PERT. This is where you're laying out all the tasks and identifying those tasks that can be done simultaneously. And then you're putting timelines on each one of those so that you can identify what is the critical path, that if that particular item is delayed, if that particular part of the path is delayed, then it's going to delay the entire project. That is the primary purpose of this. If you do not have multiple paths that you are using in order, or you do not have tasks that can be done simultaneously, then this probably isn't the right analysis for you. Let's talk about how it's done. Okay, so essentially you have an earliest start time, and then you have the amount of time that's needed, and you have a latest start time. And you usually have these little boxes that are underneath each one of the steps. This is the steps in order to do this. The first is you take your task list that you have. One really good way is to put them on little Post-it notes, and then when you can rearrange them, you can add to them. You can do that once you get it all completed. Then you can create it in PowerPoint or Word or something along those lines using SmartArt. Or not SmartArt, but using the tools that PowerPoint gives you, I recommend. Okay, so you have all of your tasks here. The first thing that you're going to do is to sequence them. And you can see here that there are three lines of tasks that can be done simultaneously. You're doing the same thing to get to the action plan here. And then you can create, this happens to be developing a training program for water solutions. And so this is a real world one that was done for a school by a TQM class that I was teaching. And they chose to help reduce water use. And this was before sustainability was a big deal, but it's very relevant. So they had this first list of tasks that were developing the materials. Then they had to get the approval for the tasks. So they had to meet with the school boards and the teachers. They had to do all that before they could test out the materials. And then they needed to meet with the task force. So that's the first step, is to identify those things that can happen simultaneously. The next thing is to identify the time duration. Don't go to hours. The shortest should probably be 1 day, but days, weeks, months, if it really is going to take that long, and you just put that in each one of those. Then, and you still have those timelines, the 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 days, whatever there. Then you're going to start with day 0 and add the number of days. So this is 2 weeks, and that gets to day 14. Then 1 day to brainstorm solutions to 15, 1 day or 1 week to create an action plan to 23. And then you go into your simultaneous things. So you have all 3 of these tasks start on day 23, but this one takes a week, this one takes a month, this one takes a day. So you find out how long it takes you to do all the tasks. Now, once you get to where all of these tasks come together, then you take the longest date, which in this case is after the meeting with the school board and the teachers, because both of those groups only meet once a month, that you end up at day 84. So the earliest date that you can start the test materials is day 84. And then that's a week, and then there's the end. That is called the forward pass. The next step that you're going to do is a backwards pass. This helps you identify slack time, and it helps you identify your critical path. And so you take these days, and you can see in the last 2 that when everybody is on the same timeline, those are identical. But then when you get down here, you have day 84, but then this is only 1 day, so that's 83. So you have all this slack time. You can meet with the task force early or late in the process. And you have to decide whether that makes a difference. But from the sequencing standpoint, you have slack time there. And then this one also, you have day 84 here and day 70. And so you have about a month slack time here. This one, though, all of them are the same. So what does that make that? That makes that the critical path. That if you miss that school board meeting, or if you miss that teacher's meeting, your whole project is going to get delayed a week. So that is the PERT chart, activity network, critical path analysis. Okay, the second is the work breakdown structure. Any of you who have taken project management had to do a work breakdown structure in that, and that is where you are organizing your tasks into work packages. So you have your project. Each project has a number of themes. And again, this is another one where they have different names, just like with the tree diagram. Sometimes they call these different levels different names. But essentially, you just need to know that there's the project at the top, and then there are kind of like major categories, major themes. And then each theme has got a number of activities, and each activity has a number of tasks. This is where work is carried out. This is a work breakdown structure example. It happens to be construction of a house, and you can see that it was 3 major areas, which were the internal, the foundation, and the external of the house. And then there was the electrical, and then there were others down there, excavating and masonry work. And then each one of those had the amount of work and the budget at each level. So this is really useful in order to identify what budget there is needed at each step of the implementation plan. So this is another detail of that same WBS. You notice that it has a percentage there, percentage of work done, or percentage of work that this task is. You need software to do that. And you really don't need to do something like that. You can take the hours to complete or the days to complete or whatever it is and put that there. Again, you're trying to give useful information to the stakeholder, and percentage is only useful if they have that kind of software and they're used to using it. So the number of hours or days is probably a more useful piece of information there. But again, it has the budget on these particular lines. Here are a few guidelines that you may or may not remember from project management. The top level is the final deliverable for the project. The sub-deliverables have work packages that are assigned to a particular department or unit. So you have all the stuff that's in that work package is assigned to one particular department or unit. And they define the work, the duration, and the costs in order to produce this sub-deliverable. Something that's a nice little rule of thumb, not hard and fast, but a rule of thumb, is that work packages shouldn't exceed more than, say, about 10 days. They should be independent of other work packages in the work breakdown structure. And they should be unique and not duplicated across this. So if you have something that requires a lot of cross-functional work, a lot of coordination between departments and all of that kind of stuff, where or teams that work together from different places, then a WBS may not be the best choice for you. So keep that in mind. You can also organize it and use color to help you see the organization in the snapshot. So you can have different colors for the levels, or you can have different colors for the paths, whatever provides the best information. The third one we're going to take a look at is the process decision progress chart. I always have to look that up because I can never remember it, because I always called it a PDPC. It looks a lot like your tree diagram. Except once you get to the activities, you have to identify activities or the tasks. It depends on where you are. You take a look and you identify, this is a contingency planning sequence diagram. And so it's trying to identify possible problems and then possible countermeasures. And when you have, if you can identify a couple of countermeasures that you might have, or a couple of solutions that you might have, you then might want to identify which one you think will probably be the best one. Remember, what you're trying to provide your stakeholder is something that when they're under stress, and there's a problem, you've already thought it through and you're giving them some ideas of what some possible solutions are. And so that is completed staff work. You notice, well, you can't see it in this one very well, but you'll see it in other words. The bottom level, the countermeasures are always, and I mean always, depicted in clouds. Don't ask me why, I don't know, but that's a typical part of a PDPC. That's how you can identify a PDPC. So don't get creative and create diamonds and trapezoids and those kinds of things. These are rectangles, and then these are clouds. So here, the step one is to use your task list with the tree diagram. And then lay out the activities and tasks and identify potential problem areas. So this goes back to planning a school campaign. And the first thing was to select the focus of the program, then design the lesson plans and then meet with the school board. So one of the things that they wanted to do is to measure the effectiveness. So what happens if the lessons are not effective? Well, then you're going to brainstorm solutions. You can request assistance from that task force, or you can seek guidance from learning experts. So that shows you the little clouds there. Meeting with the school board, remember that was a critical path kind of an item there. If there's no meeting, then what do? And then the last thing is to evaluate those solutions. And of course, I need to move myself out of the way. That you evaluate the solutions again, so that you're not, so that the person who's under stress doesn't have to suddenly come up with the solutions. There's already potential solutions that are there that have been evaluated and say, hey, look, this one, seeking guidance from learning experts, is probably the better way to go, rather than requesting assistance from the task force. The last segment of the chapter is the actual scheduling. Remember, we did the resource planning, then we did the sequencing of the tasks. Now we're going to do the scheduling. And you may not know the exact date when it's going to start, but you do want to go ahead and identify how long it is from day one to whenever it is completed, based upon your sequencing dates there. So one of the things I want to make sure it's clear from you is that when you're scheduling this is scheduling the implementation plan. This is not scheduling your whole capstone project. So forget about the first couple of months. Don't include those. Do not include those in this. What you're going to do is start with, once they've made their decision and they're starting to purchase materials or identify the people who are going to work with you or whatever all else that's going to be, that's the implementation plan. It is the implementation plan for the stakeholders, not for you and your capstone project. And this consists of a Gantt chart. It will be a Gantt chart because Gantt charts are ubiquitous in the business world. So we're going to demonstrate that we know how to do a Gantt chart. And this is basically what a Gantt chart looks like. This is a very simplified one, and it has essentially the start dates and the tasks in the order in which they're done. And it can show also which things can be done simultaneously. So essentially what you're doing is taking your PERT chart or your work breakdown structure or work breakdown schedule structure or your PDPC, and you're translating it into this. Now this gives you an idea of the kinds of symbols that you use in a Gantt chart. The summary task is this top line here, and it is the entire activity, if you think about it from your task list, or from your tree diagram. So this would be like the activities, and these would be the tasks, or these would be from a WBS. This would be the sub deliverable, and these would be the tasks for that sub deliverable. And then you have your tasks. The little arrows here are a relationship. It's linked so that you have to complete the previous one before you can start the next one. And then when you're completed with that particular activity or sub-deliverable, then you have a milestone. Now, you can do these using Microsoft Project. We'll get to that in a second. But Excel actually has a number of Gantt charts. Just search for Gantt charts, and there's a half a dozen different ones that you can take a look at, and it'll come up with certain things. Now, you notice that it will have some columns that you don't need. If you don't need them, delete them. In this particular case, it had some specific information on like the planned start and the actual start, the planned duration, the actual duration. Well, since this is a plan, you don't know what that is, and so you can just delete those columns. Now this is from Microsoft Project, and it's a very fast and easy way. Now, one of the things that you'll notice here is that most of the ones that are done in Excel don't have the little arrows for relationships. And if you can't create those, that's okay. You can still use Excel there, but you can very easily link these tasks in Microsoft Project. And you can get Microsoft Project for free from the Microsoft DreamSpark helpful links there. And if you need help with that, you can contact Alex Baywell, who is our librarian and tech expert in the College of Business, and he'll make sure that you can get this. This is a $600 program that you can get for free, and it's pretty easy to learn. So even if you didn't take Microsoft Project, or I'm sorry, take project management as a course, you might want to consider getting this software. So let's review the actions that you need in order to develop this chapter. Develop your task list. Do not include it in the paper. Create the task sequence, which can be a WBS, it can be a PERT chart, be a PDPC. Create your timeline, which is the Gantt chart. No other options. It's a Gantt chart. And identify the resources that are needed. Now, the order, you notice this is in a slightly different order than the way I presented it tonight. Sometimes it flows better in a slightly different order. Like you might have your task sequence. You might have your resources before the task sequence, or you might have them after, might even have them in the middle. But you need to think about what is the most logical flow for you. And as a reminder, you only need to put in your implementation plan those things that the stakeholder is going to do. And you only need to do those particular recommendations that have been selected by the stakeholder. There may be a lot of things that you have recommended that they're saying, no, that's not a good fit. Well, you don't have to put those in your implementation plan. So it's a good idea to check with your stakeholder if you can, and see which ones they are most interested in doing and focus on those. If you have any questions, you can email me, and I stand ready to help. We'll talk to you later. Have fun.